All right, hello, I'm Lieutenant Colonel Tino Perez here at the U.S. Army Commanding General Staff College, and this is episode 16 of Arguing the OE, and the title of this episode is The Folly of Unfamiliar Problems. And I want to give a short talk today about a concern I have, and it's about an orthodoxy that seems to be arising within the four halls of Lewis and Clark here at Fort Leavenworth. And it's this notion that we have, three different types of methodologies for conducting military planning. One of them is troop leading procedures, which mostly our small unit tactical leaders use, those leaders that don't have staffs, company and below, in order to conduct their operations. And then we have the military decision-making process, which is done with a staff, so battalion and above. And then we have Army design methodology, which I think is really integrated into our MDMP, and I would even argue troop leading procedures, but it is being presented that way. And here's my concern. The belief seems to be gaining ground that troop leading procedures are for familiar problems. Familiar problems. And the MDMP is sufficient for familiar problems when you have a staff. Right? But that Army design methodology is only useful when we have unfamiliar problems, or what used to be called wicked or unfamiliar or ill-structured, wicked or ill-structured problems. Okay? And this is something that concerns me, because it depends on the belief that we're able to distinguish between familiar problems and unfamiliar problems, and especially that we think we'll be embarking upon a familiar problem. We'll only do MDMP, and we won't do what our Army design methodology entails, and we'll find ourselves getting into trouble. So what I want to start off with here is a quotation from the Washington Post on August 30th, 2013, and it was a thought piece by Alan Sloan, who has been watching the economy for 40 plus years, writing about the economy and business. And he has an argument about whether the government should or should not have bailed out Lehman Brothers. And that argument really doesn't concern me. What concerns me is the following statement, which I really like. He writes, "The true lesson I take from Lehman is that a simple move that was praised by free market types at the time, letting Lehman fail, set off unanticipated consequences that brought the financial world to its knees within days. It was an object lesson about how things that seem simple on the surface can come back to bite you in unanticipated places, in unanticipated ways." And so it's not only within the military, but it's in all walks of life that we have a tendency to believe that what we are engaging is a familiar problem, and if we just apply tried and true and intuitive solutions to these familiar problems, all will be well. But we find out in politics, of which war is a part, and in other walks of life, is that what appears to be familiar really isn't. So at one time we thought that, hey, 2003, Iraq, we thought this posed a problem for us. And we thought, well, we can solve this problem if we simply decapitate the regime, right? But what we fail to appreciate is that once we decapitate a regime, we set loose a whole bunch of forces that are unanticipated, unpredictable, and that ended up biting us in the butt. So 2003 Iraq was the kind of problem that we were familiar with, because we had fought this kind of battle against the Krasnovias at the National Training Center, at the JRTC, at Fort Polk, in Grafenwehr and Hohenfels in Germany, and we thought we can fight this. Actually, we've also done it before in 1990. But what we failed to account for was the fact that what seems to be simple can be unfamiliar. And I want to emphasize the following. Every situation, even a tactical situation, contains its own bundle of problems that make it unfamiliar. Every tactical situation is unfamiliar because of the dynamics going around it. And one of the things I want to do today is just recommend a short reading. It's about 15 pages, but it comes from a book that was published in July 2013, and the general editor is Donald P. Wright, PhD, and it was published by the Combat Studies Institute Press here at Fort Leavenworth. And the name of the volume is 16 Cases of Mission Command. And specifically, I commend the whole book, but specifically, I want to call your attention to the chapter that addresses Colonel Perkins, who was the BCT commander of the 2nd BCT of the 3rd Infantry Division in 2003. And what we find is that as Colonel Perkins led his brigade in the Thunder Run and the aftermath, he was indeed paying a lot of attention to the tactical nuts and bolts aspects of the problem that he faced. But he was also concerned at the tactical level with the link-in between tactics and tactical success and strategic ends. What he wanted to make sure was that the actions he was taking tactically would contribute to the strategic ends. And this is a brigade commander talking at a tactical level. He was also concerned about information. Right? He was concerned about what his actions with his brigade and the larger force, the effect that information would have on world opinion, which was watching the attack unfold on TV screens all across the world. He was concerned also about how his actions would be perceived by the Iraqis. And he thought that he could actually conduct operations in such a way by aggressively preparing to attack into Baghdad, and later on, in accordance with mission command, getting approval from his higher commanders at the division and corps level. He thought that he could achieve shock value by convincing the Iraqis that, hey, those persons who are rebelling are doomed to lose because we're already in the middle of Baghdad. So he was thinking about these things, the linkage between tactics and strategic ends, information, and this idea of shock value that any other commander could have simply ignored. I have my mission as a commander. I'm going to conduct my operations. I'll conduct my planning, but that's not sufficient, because every tactical situation contains its own bundle of dynamics. It's important for even tactical leaders to sort these things out. And as we've spoken before a few times, Army design methodology and operational design at the joint level is designed to structure our conversations between staff officers, unified action partners, and commanders in such a way as we can get a firm understanding of these things. I want to conclude with a paraphrase of something that our chairman, General Dempsey, was quoted as saying a few weeks ago in the build-up to the discussion about what to do in Syria. And he stated, and this is a very close paraphrase, that military power seldom accomplishes its intended aims, if ever. Military power seldom accomplishes its intended aims, if ever. Given that observation from one of our top military leaders, I think it's useful to start now destroying this notion, this distinction between familiar problems on the one hand and unfamiliar problems on the other, because I think it can only get us into trouble. Thank you.